think we're just trying to record now. Yeah. So Mycelium Ecology was founded by a couple of more people, including myself, two more, Nishant and Abhishek. And each of us come with a very diverse set of problem statements, but are thinking in very much on the first principle basis. I think one of the big reasons why I decided to leave my corporate life and build Mycelium was the need as an urban dweller to fall in love with nature again. And it isn't, nature is today very perceived to be on Instagram between hashtags and very much driven by what the beauty is. But true nature, I remember as a childhood memory to be very raw. People should be afraid of nature as much as respect it. And we don't do that today because we're very far away from it. So we believe that it doesn't matter to us. So one of the big reasons why I decided to build Mycelium was to see how I can bring the narrative of getting inspiration, nature back. My other co-founder, Nishant, had seen the destruction of monoculture, aggressive agriculture, and what it was doing to regions like Western Ghats. So he brought in the angle of what can we do for conserving Western Ghats. And then my third co-founder had lived a life among nature, and he's built this narrative called coexistence with nature. So summarizing all three views together, what we are doing at Mycelium is building a narrative where we conserve Western Ghats by coexisting with it. And by coexistence, I mean, how can we derive value? How can we appreciate the value? What can we do to make nature more accessible for people so they can appreciate it? So this is why I'm here. I have no expertise. I think when you and I were discussing about what do we talk about today, my first question is, why me? There are 100,000 people who do such big impact work. But to me, what I like about this is I'm on the learning journey. So I've got my popcorn and my front view to this roller coaster ride. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how I can learn. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself and Mycelium Ecology, Nick.
Wonderful, Vinod. And to answer why you, I would say, because it's probably how close here to nature, I would say, because it's not just for the sake of the various programs the government is running or the various shout outs people are doing these days. Like we have a lot of people protecting of course, when you talk about Western Ghats, there's like, we have it's a hot spring, right? So we have all these hot endangered species out there. People are trying to protect in different ways. Like if you're talking about tiger or if you're talking about tar or something, there are a lot of people already working out there to actually protect and conserve these species from getting extinct. But I think they miss the grassroots, because if we look at the big animals and try to protect them, it's not that just the human interference that's causing this extinction from my limited knowledge. Like there are a lot of things that's actually causing this extinction from the very grassroots of why it happens in the first place. Because as you know, like the various species went extinct only because the species they were eating on got extinct. So it's all the food chain, right? So if you just miss one connecting link, it will lead to another butterfly effects of losing various other species. So I think that's what excited me about the work you guys do, because you're focusing on the fundamentals like the fungi and the basic insects, which actually protects the planet, I would say, from our own experience as well, reading about it. Because yeah, as I like, there are immense amount of projects, people behind the big things, but sometimes it's the small that matters, right? That's what causes all the big impacts. So that's why I decided to pick you for this interesting discussion, I would say. And as you said, like we have so much disconnected from nature these days. Like we have so many Instagram posts, so many hashtag protect nature, sustainability, and blah, blah, blah happening. But how many actually go into the nature and live in the nature, in the tropicals? So that's what, if taking about myself, like when I was in Sydney, like we were every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we take out the weekend off, just run into the forest and camp there and do fully disconnected from the entire world. And that contributes immensely to our mental health and just regenerates the whole stress and everything. Just you will be completely fresh. And that's, I think, one thing we are completely missing here, the connection with the true nature, as you said, in the raw format. So yeah, so that's so what's your thoughts on that? How much the, as you said, like it has a huge impact which our new generation are missing. So how do you see it actually helping our health, and why do you think it happens?
Well, I'm starting to learn to love nature, and in the last 1 year, I've spent a lot of time walking around trees and plants and areas where I would normally be afraid of as an urban dweller. I mean, even for me, between my co-founder and I look like a walking, talking decathlon merchandise. Versus my co-founder walks with sandals and t-shirts, and he has no accessory. So even there, the true love to nature is in its raw format. So from my experience, and when I grew up in a tier 2 city in South India, and nature for us came because there was no development. It was not like I was living among forests. It was just that there was no development as a city, that we had a lot of greenery, and that greenery was not artificial greenery, but it was just the wild development of that place. And I remember breaking my hands. I remember getting scared of snakes I saw on the road. I remember dogs chasing. A lot of that was part of my childhood memory. A lot of that shaped up to be who I am. And fast forward, when I moved to city, when I traveled across the globe, when I see, when I sort of cut off from there and went to chase money and went to chase, career development, I quickly realized that I had completely forgotten about that part of my life. But that part of my life was also primarily a core memory. I always felt happy to see a tree. I always felt happy to see an empty road, where there were no buildings, and at least the point of something, uh, where there is no destruction anywhere. And after getting married and after having 3 kids, I saw how much further. Oh, sorry, I think somebody. Yeah, there you go. I saw how far away my kids were from nature, and their core memories are behind computers. Their core memories are really behind. They're sitting on nature in a world like Minecraft, where they go to a forest trek on a computer, on a VR experience, which is what literally my kids does, than to take them to a park and ask them to see an insect, and they get scared of insects. So what does it do to mental health? And I think in the last 1 year of me connecting back with this, and in a very serious way, right? I mean, I'm talking about 8 hours of trek in leech-driven forests where you're getting bitten by leeches and you're seeing new sights and you're seeing new smell. I think I've changed into a newer person. I'm raring to go back there, and I feel safe. I'm not scared as I thought I would be. And my first encounter at this place of Mycelium Ecology, where we were building it, one place where we wanted to conserve, we'd gone on a trek to see it. And I was very literally not too far away from a Malabar pit viper. It's very common to see it in Coorg, in Western Ghats, and it's one of the most poisonous snakes within India, and there isn't a lot of antidote, especially in Coorg recently made available. And if this would have been a Vinod who was an urban dweller, I could have shooed it. I would have never come back to that place. I would have been really scared. But the fact that I felt really safe, and I went immediately, instruction was for me to take my camera out and snap it, meant that I was one with it. And I think when you respect nature, when you're careful with it, when you're walking in with good intention, for me it was learning the touch and feel, the smell. I think a lot of that has a huge impact on it. And it doesn't matter. It's not that everybody has to go to a forest. So I've taken in the last 1.5 years, Bangalore has given me opportunities to go on treks around Bangalore. Bangalore has got a lot of monolithic hills. Nandi Hills is not the only place. And around Nandi Hills in itself, there are 10 or 20 beautiful places to trek. So recently, last week, I'd gone to a place for a trek with a couple of my friends. I'm not into treks. My body is not physically made to go on a 7-hour trek. I'm not used to it. I'm very afraid of heights and everything. But the fact that I went there, I didn't go to the summit. I actually walked away from it because it was too difficult for me. But we did beautifully other things. We went on a lake and we saw this. Once every 2 weeks, where I take on this, almost makes me feel like I'm ready to go back facing the world again, right? And the fact that I'm able to be there within nature. And that I see is changing for my kids. The more I am talking, I have a wall of images I've taken every time I go on a forest. I have a microscope where we start to look at it. I'm bringing that knowledge, learning, and the curiosity for my kids, that now they are slowly appreciating it. They are slowly not getting afraid of insects, and they're not getting afraid of butterflies. We've gone on a trek to our property in Coorg, and they were beautifully appreciating the surroundings and stuff. So I think it is this imminent fear that they are so far away, and the conservation, like you said, is done by somebody else. Why should I care? And why should an insect getting extinct in a place like Western Ghats should worry an urban dweller in Bangalore is a wrong notion. Not that you should go and hug a tree and go in front of a forest office and do dharna, but appreciating your own backyard and the plants you have around your backyard, I think is a great, great mental health remedy. And I've seen it firsthand myself. So I don't know if science says anything, although I think science says forest therapy is great. All the beautiful chemicals the forest releases are great for your body. But I'm not a scientific expert. But my first-hand experience is that it's beautiful. So yeah, I truly believe I can't wait to go back again and again whenever I get an opportunity.
Wonderful. Same for me too. It's just amazing, right? Whenever we just fully switch off and emerge and just engulf in this beautiful forest, it's just completely different experience. There are just so many points to follow up from this last 4 minutes. So I will start with one. As you said, we are completely getting disconnected from this forest. Like we are fully getting into our corporate life and all the employments, and our new generation, even education system is not something that engages us with the forest lively. As you said, like VR and AR, it might evolve, but I don't think it will ever give you the experience of walking through the forest and just sensing the smell, the wetness, and the noise of all the insects around. So yeah, the first follow-up will be, how do you think we should restructure our education, or how should we pass on this to our next generations upcoming? Because it's very important. Like we, like our grandparents and parents might have had that, but that was completely from a underdeveloped perspective, which you just clearly mentioned. It's a very valid point, because we always see forest as underdeveloped areas. That shouldn't be the case. Like there should be the developed areas with thought given to the conservation of ecosystems and sustainability around us. So as you said, like when the urbanization happens or the city develops or we employ more people and when our living standards increase, that shouldn't be at the cost of deforestation or cutting down the forest. That's the whole point, right? So how should we work on to pass on these thing, whatever we are experiencing, that might be just a rare, maybe 10% of our population is feeling this. Let's just sees it as forest or city. There's nothing in between. So how do we combine these together and make a perspective that we can pass on to our next generation? What do you think will be the best ways we can give to the upcoming generations and kids? Maybe through education or through experience, or
No, I think it's a great question. It's also a very heavily loaded question, because there is no one true answer, and I have no expertise, so I'm only giving my observation and perception on the problem. My co-founder puts it really well when we talk about destruction. It's very easy for us to say, I do not want destruction. There is a lake in somewhere in Bangalore, and there is a rock which is getting scale down for sand and rocks and cement and pollution. But I also complain about potholes and having no roads. As somebody who's complaining about development in a city like Bangalore, I can't also say that you can't do destruction in development, because we are growing too fast, and cities like Bangalore is on the brim of development. How do you think about, how do you stop something to do something else? That's not the right way to think about it. So I think there is a lot of right and wrongs today, which are tomorrow's wrongs and rights in many ways. So the second bigger problem is scale. How do you say that I have developed a sustainable model when you're doing it within a span of 10 years or 15 years of your career? What does sustainability mean? Is there a timeline to it? Do you do 25 years? If I'm able to build a forest out, it's great. A lot of people are planting trees, 10,000 trees and 20,000 trees. But what does it even mean? Are you planting it the right way? Are the trees native within that place? Are you bringing some value to it? So that's the second big question, which is always, there's a lot of conflict there. Whenever we discuss about the long-term plan, there's a lot of people who say, don't care about long-term. A lot of people who say, if you can't do something which sustains for 100 years, then don't talk about sustainability. So that's also another big open question. Then the third bigger question, which is there, is what does value mean? Why don't you want to go and live in an underdeveloped, perceived forest? Because you don't have internet connection, you don't have the necessary today's world, right? You don't have the safety mechanism. You don't have the development. You don't have Swiggies and Zomatos and all of those. And those are all, in certain cases, really important. And some of these are basic. In my previous organization, we used to say, I was working for an insurance company, and there it was roti, kapda, makan, and suraksha, which is insurance. But today there is also internet. There is also Instagram. There is also YouTube Shorts. So each person has a different basic necessity. How do you bring that in today's world? So these are like 4 or 5 very big questions which people debate and talk about. But in a sense, I think one big thing I've realized is nobody cares about forests because nobody is against.
Yeah, should be good to go. Sorry. I think you're muted, Vinod.
Oh, yeah, there you go. I was just setting the practice for everybody in the audience to mute also, showing them the mute button. But no, I think nobody values forests because they don't understand it. And forest does not have to be 6-hour drive through a non-drivable road on a pitch dark thing. And I've seen some beautiful lakes to have an ecosystem here. I've seen beaches who give you the same energy as a forest does. So it's any ecosystem where nature plays a bigger role, and us being part of it. What we don't appreciate as humans is we think we are apart from it. We think that there is humans and then there is nature. And then this nature is for us to deplete and take over because we are the bigger species. We are the better ones. We have better insights. We have vocabulary. We have hands. We have opposable thumbs. All of that makes us superior. But in reality, without nature, we cannot live. I mean, there's one statistics which had come out that bees, if we let bees die tomorrow, and which they are depleting in a rapid phase, and we start to pollinate ourselves as human beings, and we go take a manual brush and start to pollinate flowers, and we somehow find technology to be able to do it. It will cost us $140 billion per year to do what bees are doing for free of cost, right? And pollination is huge. 1 out of every 3 food particles we take contains pollens, which the bees sort of spread across and all of it. So when you think about appreciating value, it goes just beyond how much is the real estate value of this. So one big goal we are taking is, what is future generation? How can we save the future generation? One of the big ethos we are building on is this quote, which we learned many in one of the instances is, we didn't inherit this planet from our ancestors, but we borrowed it from our children. When you think about it, it isn't something which is given to us. It's our duty to sort of ensure that we hand it at least in some format back to our children. So children are the biggest thing. It's a long-winded answer where it's not right. There is no right or wrong. There is very difficult to open this Pandora box and say, you should be doing a better job, you should be doing a better job. But if we can enable and inspire our children and the future generation, I think it's a wonderful thing, which is what Mycelium is doing, which is what a lot of people, as part of Mycelium building, I've realized do. So many people I know are creating stewardship programs for schools where they can think about early programs, right? Where you're going in, you're building, what does this insect do? Understand the reptile, understand the difference between mammals. Because biology has always been cut a cockroach, you're just scared. 10 people will surround you and you'll just cut it. That's how I remember. And I remember cutting a leaf among 20 people and in a lab which was compressed. But that isn't just about that. You've got to go deeper into understanding each one of those. So we are trying to build a narrative where people could touch and feel and interpret school. I mean, my kids themselves, I want one of them to be an entomologist. I want one of them to be a biologist. I don't want an engineer or a doctor, because there are too many people solving all of those. There aren't many who want to be entomologists, especially in India. No kid want to go and study insects. There's nobody I know who's gone there and saying, I want to be, but there are, I know so many beautiful people I've met in my journey of building Mycelium who've done PhDs, who are so in love with insects, who are so in love with it. And there's nothing wrong. I think it's a beautiful place to be in. And I wish I had thought that way, so I could have become an entomologist in another life. So I think it's very important to focus on the future generation. They are our only hope. It's also very important to give them a golden platter where some of this is taught through using today's technology, using today's mind. What else are we here for if we are not solving for it, right? Not a lot of us have an option for planet B. We only have an option for plan B. So we should try going with it. So I think it's very important. There's a lot of programs, very interesting stuff around how do you educate kids early on, bring them, get them to go to a park, get them to get hurt, and get them to touch and feel the grass, and build a swing on a tree and let them do it. They shouldn't be perceived lawns and all of it. And, you know, cities like Bangalore is so beautiful for a lot of people to go and appreciate nature in its true format.
Wonderful, wonderful. Absolutely. So it's in your perspective, it's more about we gearing them the right direction instead of taking them to the labs and just cutting the microscope, cutting the small samples and putting under microscope and everything. Like by the time we reached our higher education, like cockroach operation was pretty much like illegal, so we couldn't do that. But yeah, so it's end of the day, like we shouldn't be seeing nature as just for experiments or just for learning, right? So it's more about how we train our next generation to engage themselves and feel the forest in life, not in like labs. I think that's a big project you guys are on sitting on as well, because we don't have much options today, right? Even if we say like, okay, this is what children do, but there is unfortunately very limited options. Either it's very underdeveloped, like, you know, as you said, it's still fear, but it's only the knowledge that can override fear, right? So for children, still leech and snake might be a bit fearful. So it's not the ideal place for them to actually start learning. So we should have somewhat protected areas, somewhat, I don't know how to describe it best, but somewhat actually bit safe, but still for us to go.
Yeah, so, I think that's where a technology, today's world of knowledge and creativity can come. You know, if you've gone to the Vishwesharaya Museum in Bangalore or anywhere else, there's a lot of interpretative way of doing. I mean, you could simply use textile and showcase the texture of a snake. You could simply use nice AV and AR and VR to talk about an ecosystem of an amphibian. It isn't just about seeing it in raw form. It's about understanding that nature is dangerous, but it's also dangerous only because you think and you feel that way. I mean, you go today in my apartment complex in Whitefield, I saw a monkey, and the security guards were trying to chase it away. But I'm assuming that monkey has been coming there. We've encroached its area. It's full of trees. It's got its own ecosystem. It's coming to hunt for maybe mangoes or whatever it is. But all of a sudden, it just becomes our place. And we want to expand that our place into nature is also our place. And insects who are in your backyard potted plants are also there for a reason, and they help in a certain way. I think appreciating and understanding that for kids go a long way for inspiration. They don't have to, all of them don't have to become, they could still go on to be an engineer, they could still want to be somebody else, but they'll appreciate it. They'll appreciate, they won't destroy it, or they won't, they'll think twice before shooing it away. And I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to get back to one point you mentioned, because like that's where I think your main focus area is as well, right? So these fundamental, like you said, like the importance of bees. So as Einstein said, it's like if bees go extinct, we have only like 4 years maximum before we humans ourselves get extinct. So that plays that much important role in the whole ecosystem sustainability, like breeding all the next species and conserving a lot of species, which is getting pollinated by bees. And if that species grassroots doesn't happen, then all the food chain after that gets extinct as well. So let's dig a bit more into it. So what do you think? What do you think is probably not the right question, but how important do you think the role played by these grassroots species like fungi, and which I think most people has a misconception about fungi itself. They just see it like, oh, it was fungi, we should stay away from it. Right? So how do we start appreciating what's the importance of fungi and those grassroots species, which actually builds the entire ecosystem around it? What's your thoughts, and what's a bit more into your exact work as well, like what mycelium exactly do and how are you foreseeing that to make an impact? What's your plans?
Yeah. I think I was one of those people who were afraid of mushrooms. So it's such an irony that I'm calling our organization, we are calling it Mycelium, and I'm co-founding it. And I've just started eating mushrooms, and I've always been afraid of it because I always thought it grew near a ditch or a sewage area because it was always killing dead, growing from the dead, right? And turns out that it's a very, wherever Britain went, mycophobia went along with it. For example, Russia I understand Russia has always had foraging mushrooms to be a big deal. China has it as an ancient medicine for the longest time. Even in India, a lot of people prior to the British rule had a lot of things around mushroom, right? So in a way, what I realized was it's how things are perceived, how it's being interpreted, and how much of an ignorance I have. What you brought up a point where you said, what is important? Why is it important? The flora, the fauna, the fungi, the insects. I want to almost say that all of it is important, and there is so much within that I cannot possibly point a finger and say, fungi, you alone ensure that the forests are growing. And I'm starting to learn this from all the books I'm reading, all the people, that it's almost like going to a general physician and saying that I want you to operate my eye. The human body is so complex that you walk into an Apollo and there are 100,000 specialists, from everything from a nerve to your blood, to your heart, to your mental health, to everything else. And I think that is, if you were to ask one of the specialists, would you say you are important? It's not fair for them to say eyes alone are important. So I think that's a good analogy to take it to nature and saying, who is important? Tell me. And I don't think there is one right answer. As a third person who's just starting to see, I'm so scared to, like, I'm reading a book currently called The Immense World. And this book is about a concept called umwelt, which is each creature, species, perceiving their world themselves. For example, how does a dog perceive the world? Is dog colorblind? Do they smell? Do they touch? How do they do it? And how do peacocks look at it? How do mouse look at it? So when you think about it from each of the species, a plant, and how do plants look at photosynthesis, each of them become their own specialist, that it's a very complex world. And it's so difficult for you to point and say which is better. So what that means is you have to look at it as the whole ecosystem, which is what we are starting to believe in. It is not just about big animals. It's also not just about a tree. It's about that entire ecosystem coming together to survive, wanting to be together. So, which is at the core of what Mycelium is trying to do, is how could we understand the whole biodiversity and the ecosystem of it? And then how could we think about conservation, which is long term? How could you think about conservation, which is commercial? Because if it is just conservation, we lock the keys of a forest and throw it away and saying that we've conserved it. It's not fair. We have to drive value. We have to find places for human development, right? You've got to find ways to make money because that is a big need of the hour. It's as much as your breathable air, money is important in today's world. How do you drive value? And at the same time, how do you coexist with nature? So these are the three broad goals we have at Mycelium. And it is all at one, right? It's all of us together. It's very collaborative. We're not saying that nature is ours, forests are ours. We'll be the only person making money out of it. It has to be accessible for everybody. It has to be accessible across age, across spectrum of people, and everybody has to appreciate. So these are some philosophies we have, which is make it more accessible, make it more learning and interpretative, make it more simple. And at the end of the day, you just want to find a way to get to nature, and you just want to get inspired from it. There is nothing else complex about it. So yeah, so this is Mycelium. This is my view also on a very loaded question from your side as to what do you appreciate? I appreciate everything. If I'm reading an article of bees, then for that entire 2 days, I'm only looking through it and I'm like, oh my God, there could be so much. Then one day I go and learn about fungi and I'm like, I don't even know where to start. Then some days, like the other day, I was learning about moss and what does moss do for the forest. And I'm like, I didn't even know. So there is so much to learn that it's very difficult to point at one and say you are more important than other. I think it's all of them together is as important, as very similar to the human body.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think one very interesting point you mentioned is the importance of creating value, because a lot of people are trying, and we have been trying so hard to protect the planet and protect the nature and the forest, but it's like we are struggling for any value creation. Like we are just secluding the whole place, which I don't think adds value either. Because as humans, we are ambitious, like we are developing and we need development at the end of the day. Like we have to ensure like people out of poverty. There's so much work we have to do here. And we are already exploiting like so many resources. So I think it's more about how efficiently we use these resources without actually degrading it, right? So I think I really like that point of creating value without destroying nature. So yeah, it's the concept of coexistence. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. I think it's already 7:45, so we'll probably open for questions here. If anyone wants to, it's not really answer question as you said. We are just starting to learn. So no one has the right answers, even the proclaimed experts, I would say. So it's more about just being there and coexisting with everything we have, and just having an open mind to learn the new, right? So it's not just question answers, it's more about discussion. It can be any other points anyone would like to add, or why, how much they love, just express their own love, which actually penetrates through everyone else, right? So that's the goal. So yeah, I'll probably open up to the floor. Yeah. Anyone can jump in, add value, ask anything, or talk about your love with forest. Ashna, they can unmute, right?
I think there's a question here.
I think there's a question in the chat box.
I'll take it. Yeah. So I think it's, first of all, what you're doing, Dr. Mushroom Agrotech Private Limited, is great. Whatever you're doing, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing is great, because I'm automatically in love with the fact that you're doing something with mushroom. But what would really be the future if fungi are given more importance? I think I'm not an expert. I'll only add what I know so far. I think the more importance is the second level. The first level is importance in itself. I don't think we've started from there. A lot of people, no problem at all. A lot of people who I go and say, Mycelium Ecology, they don't know what mycelium is. What they don't understand is mycelium is, mushrooms are the flowering, if you were to correlate a plant equivalent, because fungi are a separate organism themselves, and they are neither flora or fauna, so they're neither animals or plants, and they are a third species of its own, and they have a whole new molds and lichens and all of those fall under that category. That they are now being understood, that there is so much which can be done from it. There is the world of understanding mushrooms for medicinal value, understanding mushrooms for the importance it plays in transferring nutrients between forest floors. There's a beautiful Netflix documentary called Fantastic Fungi, and I would urge everybody to watch it. It's an eye-opening world on what fungi can do. Read books from Fantastic Fungi came from a very well-known mycologist called Paul Stamets, and he writes a lot of books, and one of them is called Mycelium Running, which had given me a lot of beautiful appreciation for the mushroom world. So what can it do, mushroom? I think we don't appreciate it enough. We don't understand it enough. We don't know the impact it do, right from mycelium threads being made. Like, I know Mercedes-Benz is trying to build car seats using mycelium threads. There is a company which is using mycelium threads for making plastic alternate carry bags. There are people who are building shoes out of mycelium. There are people who are building medicinal values out of mycelium. So there is a lot. I read also that fungi themselves can be, can solve for oil spills. So there's a particular variety of mushroom which is introduced at places where there is an oil spill or a biohazard place, and they'll go and take the toxin away and convert it into mushrooms which other plants can eat. So the world of fungi is just mind-boggling, right? And I think a lot of these questions which are coming in are also waste management, and I completely agree. And I think there's a lot of research which is being done. So fungi alone, mushrooms alone, the world of mycelium alone is at a very early stage across the globe. And I think India is just beginning. And I think, Nick, you and I were also talking about proteins coming out of mushrooms, and you're also in that space as well. So very early stage, but the need of the hour is for us to appreciate it, derive value, more research, more people walking into this industry, because that's the only way for us to, I think, develop is find alternatives. So people are able to take an alternative and grow in it and derive value in something which is more, the more we have to deplete the scale wise, better it is, I guess. So yeah, so that's a long-winded answer. We have biomaterials. Perfect. I'd love to get in touch with you, Dr. Mushroom, and learn more. So I think there's one more question here is Akhil Madhavan. Can you talk about waste generation inside forest ecosystems, inside forest by ecotourism? I'd love to, Akhil. I don't understand the problem. I have not seen the problem because I'm a very new entry into this. But what I've seen is the destruction it's causing beyond just waste. It is not just about plastic anymore. So I'll give you an example. One of the things I've come to realize is this concept called Devar Kadu, sacred groves. We all have seen the movie Kantara. Forest dwellers themselves have always prayed forest to be their god, and that's their deity. And the deity comes out of the, and they truly appreciate it because they understand the value the forest is giving, and they appreciate the value, and they believe in it, they respect it, so they pray to it. And I think that's perfectly okay. And when they pray to it, they earmark, and everywhere across the globe where forest dwellers have always been there, people who live off of the forest have always had this concept that the forest is their god, and they earmark a particular part of the forest where they won't go and forage it. They won't even pick a leaf off of it. This is in Kannada called Devar Kadu. Karnataka itself has, I think, close to about 1,200 identified Devar Kadus, where for time immemorial, nobody has gone in there, which means it's a true forest area. Not a single leaf has gone plucked. So it is the place where species thrive, birds thrive, mushrooms thrive, insects thrive, and everybody else thrives there. How do I know it? I've been initiated into it. The forest we are building at the moment for conservation, I think, shares about 2 acres of Devar Kadu, and I've learned a lot from my co-founders who appreciated it. What I've come to realize, and I'm saying with waste management, I don't know waste management in ecotourism, but I'll tell you what tourism is driving and development is driving in forests like this is because the axillary areas of Devar Kadus are getting developed. Coffee estates are coming, a resort is coming, because the plantations outside of Devar Kadus are being sold. Real estate development, development for a resort or a tea or a coffee plantation, anywhere, and not just in Coorg, but anywhere else. What that has led to is, this for me, for the first time I have revealed is civet cats are known for eating coffee and then going and, the civet cat's poop is a big thing. If you go to Coorg, you would get to drink civet coffee, which is civet cat would eat the coffee seeds, it would poop it, and that poop is sort of made into a coffee, and it's supposed to taste really nice, and it's a delicacy. And in Indonesia, there is a type of monkey which does it. Here, civet cat's gut has some chemical which makes the coffee acidic. It's very nice. I haven't tried it yet because I still need to get used to it, but someday I'll try it. But the idea is the civet cats have gone there and pooped in these Devar Kadus. Coffee has become invasive. There are other species which are coming in, plants which have been invasive. So ecotourism isn't just driving waste generation. It's not just about plastic anymore, but it's also introduction of species which shouldn't be there, right? There are invasive species called exotic species like Lantana camara, or others which have taken over forests across. Human-driven ecotourism isn't generating just plastic, but I'm also hearing stuff like this. So it's a big problem. As the development happens around the perceived forest area, like you go in Whitefield towards the Sarjapura Road, if you're going, there are these small patches of timber and these forest lands, and these are just underdeveloped and yet to be developed Sarjapura area. And you go to these small patches and you see the number of plastic papers. And these days, masks have become new plastic. Wherever you go, you will see masks lying on the road. So I think wherever we go as humans, we've been creating and leaving trails. So I can't speak about what is the impact and give you data, Akhil, but I can see it. I definitely see, as an urban dweller, I'm seeing how much destruction we are doing. And it isn't just about plastics anymore. It's also the other things which we are getting. So there you go, 115,000 kgs of plastic waste. Wow. I'm sure there's a huge impact. And I think we should be thinking about that. That should be a problem we should be solving.
I would like to add to that, Vinod. So when we were going in like forest areas of Melbourne, I was going with the Aboriginals. Okay, so there are actually people who see forest as everything. So when I went with them, we didn't have range or anything. So the first point they mentioned is like I was just putting coal or something just under the tree or something. I was 6 years old, so I can't exactly remember. But the theme was they just said one thing. And that was my first camping experience. Okay, so what they said was just leave your footprints, take photos with your eyes. That's all, and go back. We shouldn't leave any other signs that we visited that place other than our footprints. So that's, I think, to answer to Akhil's question as well, like it's more about the concept. I think if you're actually asking about the waste we generate or put into the forest, it's more about the mindset we have. It doesn't matter if it's a forest or in our own backyard or if it's on the roadside. It's more about understanding to have less impact on the nature outside us as less as we can, and to cause as less trouble as possible, I think. So that lesson just stayed from there through till day. Like whenever I go somewhere in nature, just leave as minimum prints as you can. That's all I think.
Yeah. I think it's such a great way of summarizing it.
Vinod, this is Anil here. I have one question now. Very good evening.
Good evening.
Pleasure to hear you. Vinod, so if you look at it, what it really boils down to is the behavior of human beings, right? We as a people are not doing right. So is it a problem that we are all waiting for a stricter legislation to come to make sure that there are, particularly in India, until unless there are stringent mechanisms, I don't think change management, learning, awareness, all this doesn't work. We have seen that in Bangalore, we have seen in all the places. So how do we see, even if you look at Kerala, we are also struggling in Kerala, the issues of deforestation, waste management, all that type of thing. But awareness is something even now at household level. And now we all know that segregation at the starting point will make it easier. Still, that's not happening, right? Okay. Even in Bangalore, look at it, BBMP collects everything. And they collect, the irony is from homes, they collect from different buckets, they put all in one bucket and give it in the truck, right? Exactly. So, everybody knows, right? We are educated people, everybody knows there's a problem, but we do not adhere to certain principles. How do we make sure, this is inculcated, at least to younger generation, right? We are all pretty stubborn probably, but how do we bring that awareness down? What's your thought on that?
I think it's a great question, Anil. I don't believe, unfortunately, I have an answer for it, but I will give you, I don't have an expert answer because it's such a simple thing. Just respect it. Just be aware of it. But it's so easy for you to theoretically say, but difficult for you to implement it, right? I mean, it goes into the human emotions. It goes into where you are, what you're doing, right? There's a lot in play there. But to answer your thoughts on, to answer your question on how do I perceive this? What do I see this? Is the key here is unearthing what is in it for somebody like me in doing something like this. I don't have deep knowledge in waste management. I don't understand what happens once I split it into dry and waste. But it's also because I'm ignorant of what happens, right? And I wasn't aware of what happens to conserve a forest, what goes behind planting a tree, what goes behind creating an afforestation project. But it was also only up to a point where I was ignorant of it. And when I got into this world, when I started reading it, I think the world is full of knowledge, right? So I'll give you an example. Instagram has this technological advancement that you go watch one reel of Salman Khan walking in an airport and a paparazzi taking a photograph. And the next 10 reels is about paparazzis taking photographs of multiple actors. It sort of repeats it's sort of dictating what you want to see, depending on the pattern you have. And I completely shifted it. And I said, okay, if this is the case, I'm going to use technology to give me everything I want to learn about conservation, everything I want to learn about forest. Right. So I went and set up alerts. I look at gardening. I look at insects. I look at so now that I have so much content that all I have to do is open my Instagram and I'm learning. I'm spending time learning about new things and I'm appreciating it. So I think one of the key is how can you bring today's context, today's world of technology, today's world of where people stay, what language people speak. They care about the grassroots level. People care about what is in it for them, which is the value you can derive. There are, this organic is a facade. I have an organic store underneath my apartment. It's the most expensive store in there, right? But it's perceived that organic products which come from true forest produce are expensive. But that value is not being seen by people who can't afford it. So they continue to go buy from a shop where plastic is given to them. They continue to pour, plastic, throw the plastic out. It's just because they don't see value in every bit of that level they come to. So I think the first problem we need to solve for is bring value in everything which is alternative. When Zewa is building a protein alternatives which is made out of insect, they are creating a value for a narrative which was never there before, and appreciating that value, coaching people how to do it. This can't come easy. This requires continuous hard work. There is no single magic wand which will tell you tomorrow morning everybody will do it. I think we need to encourage more debates and conversations like this. We need to build more community. We need to inspire more people to come in, younger generation especially, to appreciate this. See the value in today's language, which is a big missing piece, right? I see so many NGOs who don't go on to LinkedIn and Instagram to promote their events. But people who promote their events are in front of me, like a great organization is Eateries. Eatery in Bangalore does a lot of beautiful work. And last week I had done an insect and a tree walk. They do it. There are programs around it. And I think it's the matter of more community development, bringing more people into it, more innovative ideas, right? So many people are building, so many startups are coming with alternative products. So it has to be that hard work, resilience, Nick not giving up on what he's doing, whatever you're doing, Anil, not giving up on promoting this. Me moving from corporate into this place like Mycelium and promoting this. I think we've got to continue to do it. And I think today's technology is enabling it. As I've moved here, I've seen that there are so many people who do this that I shouldn't be complaining about people who aren't doing anything. Let's just accelerate on what people are doing and continue to grow this as much as we can, right? So I think that's my perception on this, and I think we should continue to separate. Whether BPMP does it or not is very different. Whether we support, whether we lobby with the government and ask them to change their policy, I'm sure there are people who will continue to support, and I'll support them. But I'll still continue to separate. The moment I get to know that there is something else I can do, which is maybe clean my own plate but conserve water, I'll continue to do it. So the more I learn about my own appreciation of nature, if I can continue to do it, I think that is in itself a great step forward. And there were 21 people in this part. All of them came because they loved an International Forest Day. I think them going back, all of us going back and supporting this, I think is the only way. The true simple answer is that, in my head at least, Anil. I don't know if I answered your question, but it's so difficult to answer something like this, from one perspective.
I agree. Thanks a lot, Vinod. Thank you. Let's keep
Anil,
doing the good work.
Anil, I think there was an interesting point, like, because it's sustainability today is more of seen as a luxury. Like, people who can afford it, like small population, small percentage of our population who can actually look for those expensive organic brands and things. But I think that's the very important point Vinod just mentioned. Like, until it becomes, we add as much value as possible to make it affordable for the common public, it doesn't matter how much legislations we put or how much rules or strict constraints we put on. Because as a country like India, we have bigger requirements, we have bigger problems, right? So we will be focusing on getting the food to everyone, be that on a plastic bag or something. We have so much to solve. So people always find the easiest way. So I think it's very important point, like, until we add the value to bring the cost of this sustainability down to what people can actually afford, then only these things will become the norm of the public. Then only I think it will start moving somewhere we want it to move. Thanks, Anil, for bringing that point. So
yeah,
I think we can take just maybe one or two more questions, and it's already 8 times. Yeah. Do you want to take that question? I think there's one for Mycelium.
What are some of the innovative approaches being taken to protect and restore forests, such as there are a lot of innovation, there are a lot of talk, there are a lot of plants with mycelium, but we are just managing nature. Nature will take care of it itself. I don't think it needs us to conserve. We need it to survive in our own way. So what are we doing is multiple things. One is we are trying to build a place which can be a focus on coexistence. What does that mean? Is how do you drive the value emotionally, socially, and economically from the forests? It means so emotionally is experiences. How do you inspire, build accessible places for people to get inspired, researchers to do research and development, school students to interpret nature. So that's one big goal for Mycelium. The second thing we are building is socially, how can we derive value by understanding what forests have to offer? All of us go to, I'm a I become a big, it's almost addiction now is gardening. Whichever nursery I go to, I'll pick up one plant and come. It's just, I have 170 plants in my house and it's become too much. My wife and my kids are not able to handle it anymore. But I have at least 50 of exotic plants which aren't from India, which are not from our backyard Western Ghats. I think appreciating what that means and bringing our own native plants into our house and driving value from it, I think is also great, right? So that's something which we want to bring about the joy of forest produce, bring about the joy of what it means to have accessible products. So that's the social part. And then the economical is, how do you bring accessibility through collectively funding this? What can you do to bring everybody the best of the money, the best of the product, the best of architecture? Why does there is greatness in simplicity in having a mud house, but if that mud house does not have lights and path and internet connection, what's the point? Where could we coexist? So you have to spend time in bringing today's world into a place like that, where it's not like tomorrow it becomes 100 people staying in a forest. It needs to still be as many people. You should still try to gatekeep. So there's a lot of vision we are building where we could coexist, where economically it makes sense. There's a lot more, Harsha, I could talk to you, but this is what I don't think there's innovation, but this is our creative thinking, which we think is one of our solution to many people bringing many solutions to conserve forest. Is our answer to this is conservation of Western Ghats through coexisting with it. So that's probably the innovation we have. How can we balance the economic benefits of forestry with the need for conserve biodiversity and protect human health? I think it's great. I think, like I said, there is this concept of think about any organization which brings what is called the triple bottom line. It's people, planet, and profit. Any sustainable organization, like large mega enterprise, tells you that they're working for the people, they're working for profit, and they're working for the planet. But they could be destroying planet, they could be making more money, and then they could be keeping people with the carrot at the end of the stick. But that's a great way to put it. I think you have to think about value being brought out. You have to bring today's value, which has monetary perspective to it. We cannot lock the forests out and say conservation of forest is locking the keys and throwing it away. That doesn't help. How do you bring value? Is let people in, and people who have the right intention. There are so many researchers who I meet who struggle to go find a place to do research. That research is going to help bring the next protein for Zewa systems, which is going to bring the next big alternative for dog feeds, a human protein replacement. But the grassroots level is we don't appreciate it because we think that closing the gate means that solution is done. Then the next is monoculture. The perception is if it's green, then it's beautiful. You go take a selfie next to a tea estate, but you don't appreciate that there is no diversity if they just see one single plant for miles and miles together. So how can you bring more diversity back within your own backyard, within all of these, right? So I think balancing economic with that beneficiary is starting to appreciate what the value is. How can you add value more? How can you buy a product which is coming from a forest produce and at the same time are able to coach the next person to be able to do it? What can you do if you are a startup, you're looking for the next big startup idea, then look within the world of forest. What can you do to develop a product out of it? The more people join, I think the more balance that will come. But there are multiple playbooks already. There are some beautiful NGOs who are trying to balance, bring the economic benefits out and stuff like that. But it's the $1 million question, or probably the $1 billion question, is how do we balance? There's no single playbook, I believe. I think we all need to continue to balance in our own way, and then thus the nature balances itself, I guess.
Wonderful. So since we are already 15 minutes late, so maybe we'll stop taking the Q&A. Just to summarize, I think I think what you mentioned is really like to the point. Like we just need to like understand nature better and live closer with it, and appreciate the small efforts people, NGOs, startups, everyone is doing. Because absolutely, like there is so much work being done. it's just about everyone saying, okay, we are putting plastic, but there are so many people not putting plastic. So I think, personally, I think that's a better way. Like we start appreciating the small efforts people are doing to actually protect it and doing the right thing. If we just focus on that, that more people will be doing. And in the end, like it will slowly start to grow, right? So I'll pass on to Ashna for just summarizing and yeah.
It was really, really great hearing your thoughts. So the concept that you put forward, that starting from children, it's really wonderful. Like instead of just kids going away from nature, you make them feel safe there and create the curiosity in them and brings back to forest, arranging some programs in school and all. That sounds really wonderful because we should start from our children. Then only we can ensure that the future generation will take care of the forest much better than we did. So they will think that it's the necessity of the day. Then only they will understand and take care of the nature well. And it was really nice to have you here. Thank you for your valuable time. And I really wonder how humble and down to earth you are. Being saying like I'm not an expert in this, telling that multiple times.
And
But
then he explains
yes,
everything.
yes. But I think we really need people like you who they may not be experts in everything, but who does things in the right way and making a value by their by their duties. That's what we expect people. So thank you for inspiring all of us and being so gentle and really, really thankful for your time.
Thank you
And
so much.
okay, I
Thank you for
also
having me.
thank everyone here who have joined here in this interesting discussion. So thank you, Ananda, for being here. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Bye.
Thanks a
Good night.
lot.
Goodbye.
Bye, good night.